The most important thing is that there's no such thing as time management. Time management does not exist. All that exists is priority management. So how do you choose to prioritize what it is that you're going to do? What is the difference between manipulation and influence? I believe in one word, it's intent. Is my intention a win-win? Do they win and do I win? Most people say, I haven't got the motivation. There's a distinction between the difference between motivation and inspiration. If people are using language like I need to, I ought to, I should, it's an indication they're living someone else's values.
Biggest mistake I see is people not going all in on one business and not staying focused. What would you say to that?
Focus is an acronym, isn't it? Follow one course until successful. I really like the 70-20-10 approach. I'll make something my focus for 70% of the time, and I'll have something that's 20% of my time, and I'll have something that's 10% of my time. If you're going to go into partnership with somebody, think of all of the things that could go wrong ahead of time. And then you then come up with mitigating circumstances. So basically you come up with something that if this happens, then this.
So Will, thank you for joining us. For the listeners that might not have heard or listened to you before, give a quick overview on what it is you do and why they should listen to this podcast.
So my name is Will Polston and I'm a strategist and performance coach. I help people have more fulfillment, more purpose, more freedom, and they should listen to this podcast because you guys are do a fantastic job at being brilliant hosts. So I'm sure that you're going to pull some golden nuggets out and make it beneficial for everyone.
So I've got your book North Star Thinking in my hand. When did you write this? When did this get published?
The book came out in July 2023. So yeah, just coming up to 2 years ago.
And what was your reason for writing this? What did you want to? What's the value in this book?
So there's the reason that I wrote it, and then there's I suppose the value in it is a different question. But I think most people that I've certainly come across, when they've got involved with the world of personal development or professional development, it's almost always a book that starts the catalyst. It's the lowest barrier to entry. I mean, we were just talking before we went live about courses that we've done and mentorship you've had and coaches you've worked with. But I believe in almost all instances that starts because you read a book or you listened to something. And I have read hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of personal development books, and I wanted to be able to condense what I've spent the best part of 20 years learning, understanding, gaining, that I believe is helpful to people, and just put it into my version that people can take it away and apply it. And the four main things that we cover in the book are creating your North Star, so obviously it's kind of hint in the name, being able to master time, being able to focus on gratitude and the power of gratitude and perspective, and then habit creation, of being able to how do you create those habits and maintain those habits in a way that serve you to be able to create the life that you want to have.
What's some of the tips or techniques with that then? Let's for me, in a selfish way, mastering time. Expand on that. What's some of your tips or tricks on?
So I believe that, I mean, the subtitle of the book, you says, master your mindset and live a life you love. And I think that success, however you define success, is 80% mindset, 20% skills and mechanics. So even when it comes to time, yes, we can look at doing various things, time blocking, Pomodoro technique. We can look at energy hours, scheduled time tasks, block time tasks, all of those things I can go into. But the number one thing, the most important thing to get your head around first and for all, is that there's no such thing as time management. Time management does not exist. All that exists is priority management. So how do you choose to prioritize what it is that you're going to do? And once you get your head around that as a mindset, then it's a case of, right, I'm prioritizing something over something else, and then we can unpack the reasons why you're doing that and what the drivers are. But it starts off with priority management. I think another thing that is super helpful to think about is energy, right? As Albert Einstein said, everything is energy. Anything that we do is energy. We either do things that will give us energy, I call them the sparks. So there's projects you work on, there's people you spend time with. They're the sparks. They give you a spark of energy. Or you have sponges, and sponges are people that suck the life out of you. I'm sure we can all think of someone that we've spent time with that's like a, what do they call them? Energy vampires, you know, that's or projects you're working on or businesses you're involved with, and you have, so you've got sparks and sponges. So we want to try and create days whereby we've got as many sparks as possible, as few as sponges as possible. And if you think of time as a sacred commodity, which it is, if you don't fill your day with high value activities, so high value being in obviously a business sense, what's the most profitable thing you can be doing, but from a fulfillment perspective, the thing that gives you the most joy, gives you the most fulfillment, if you're not filling your day with those high value activities, your day just gets filled with those low value distractions. And that's the key, is starting with prioritization.
Typically, most people will just put off the things that they don't want to do, right? Which they are a priority, but they're just, you know, they're just easy to let something get in the way. Like, happens to all of us, you know, because it's like you wake up, you know, you got to do that big task, but you know, something else comes up and you just keep leaving it, but you know it's still there, it's in the back of your head. But how would you say is best to prioritize those tasks?
So you're talking about the things that you're putting off?
Yeah, the things you're putting off, but you know are important.
One is a plan. So planning it in. I touched on block time and scheduled time. So the way that I define the difference between a block time task and a scheduled time task is anything that's a repetitive task. For me, that just goes in a diary, like whatever that might be. Anything that you're doing every day, every week, maybe even every month, it goes in the diary, and it sets on a digital diary, so it sets up and it's repetitive. So that's really, really practical, and you know that it's gonna happen. What I tend to find is if it goes in a diary, it gets done. Now, if stuff's going in a diary and it's not getting done, that's another conversation. Then there's the scheduled time task and block time. So what's the difference in that when you've got a diary? A scheduled time task is something that has to happen at a particular time. So we decided to record this show. We set a particular time on a particular day. If one of us didn't decide that was going to happen, then it wouldn't have happened. Whereas there's other things that you might choose to do that don't have to happen at a particular time. So let's say it's replying to emails. Well, you might know on average you have to spend 30 minutes a day replying to emails. Well, that's something that you can block time for, but it doesn't have to happen at 9 o'clock. It doesn't have to happen at 3 o'clock. Whereas picking up the kids from school, for example, has to happen at 3:30 or whatever time they finish. So it's allocating time to things to be done. And then also, depending on what the type of task is and how how you're procrastinating around it, it comes back to the intent. So I work with a lot of people that will come to me and they'll say, "Will, I keep self-sabotaging. Yeah, I don't believe in self-sabotage. Self-sabotage doesn't exist." If we flip it completely and say, "Well, what's the opposite of self-sabotage?" The opposite of self-sabotage is self-care. And a lot of people, they won't do certain things because actually, if they're really honest with themselves, the thing they want to prioritize the most is being protected by not doing that thing. So a real practical example, I was working with a client a couple of months back, and she kept saying every time we get to 2 million quid revenue, I self-sabotage. Right, so that was her ceiling. We get there and then I self-sabotage. We get there and we self-sabotage. And what we realised that what was happening was that when we unpacked it, she was working more hours that she wanted to work. She was having to do more tasks that she didn't actually want to do. And as a result, revenues would drop again. So it wasn't that she was self-sabotaging. It was actually it was self-care, because she was protecting herself from having to do more hours than she wanted to do, doing the stuff she didn't want to do, and have to expend her energy in a way that she didn't want. So it's looking at that deeper root cause to then be able to make a decision on it. Now, in her instance, it was a case of, well, what could we do that meant that you don't have to work the hours and you don't have to do the things that you don't want to do, that you could continue to grow, which in her instance, it was make a couple of hires and then you could just sail straight through the the 2 million quid mark in her instance.
Quick pause from the podcast to give a special shout out to one of our sponsors, the Rejuvenation Doctors. The Rejuvenation Doctors is a hair transplant clinic in the northwest of England in Bury, owned by Dr. Jamie. Now, I can personally vouch for these guys, as I myself around 2 months ago had a hair transplant from Dr. Jamie, and I can't wait to see the growth in the next 3 to 6 months. The service was amazing. It was very VIP. He looked after me throughout, and he made a very uncomfortable experience extremely comfortable and caring. Now, boys, if your hairline's going back, if you're receding, if you've got that McDonald's hairline, do not wait until it's too late. Message Dr. Jamie today at the Rejuvenation Doctors. His tags are in the link to the description of this podcast, and he will sort out your hairline just the same as he's sorting out mine.
Like entrepreneurs, especially in the early days, struggle with it's when do you pull the lever on making hires. I think so many people view a hire as always as a cost rather than like an investment, or actually if I get this person in, I can spend more time. Like you said, she just broke through the 2 million, even though she's just had to go and spend, or what may feel like to some people, spending money on hires. But actually, you can then do what you enjoy and what you're good at. You can get so much more done. Like for me, I have such high energy. I can bounce out of bed and work for like 14 hours if I'm doing something I enjoy, or if it's creative, or it's sales, or it's marketing, or it's coming up with a new idea or new product, or whatever it is. And I won't get tired. I can just go and go and go and go and go, and I love it. Sit me down and say, right, these are the admin tasks. You'll think I'm a special needs 4-year-old because I just literally, my brain shuts off. I'm no good at it. I get distracted. I'm like, and it takes me forever to do it. And it's like, if you can just see hires as an investment into you being able to do what you know you're best at. It's just a different mindset shift. I think so many people get stuck at that point though.
This what you've just said there is absolutely key though. So most people say, I haven't got the motivation. But there's a distinction between the difference between motivation and inspiration. So any time that you need motivation, you're needing something external, or people wanting something external to get them going. You know, we all think of like a personal trainer shouting at you to get you motivated to the gym or whatever. If people are using language like I need to, I ought to, I should, I have to, it's an indication they're living someone else's values. They're doing something that they don't really want to be doing, but somebody else is valuing it, which is why it's important for them to do. When you're using language like I love to, I choose to, I desire to, you are living your own values. You're doing the things like you were just saying there about, well, I jump out of bed and I do this sort of task and that sort of task and do it for 14 hours a day and I love it. Then you're operating in your values. Now, when you're operating in your values, you don't require motivation, which is external, because you've got internal drivers, which is inspiration. Take the word inspiration, in spirit. What's another word for spirit? Energy. You're in your energy. It's like that Taurus field where you can do the types of activities for 14 hours straight and have as much energy at the end of the day as you did at the beginning of the day, if not more, because you've been doing the stuff that you love doing. And that's the key. So that comes back to high value activities. High value in the sense of you enjoy it. Almost always, if you're doing stuff that you enjoy, it's normally the stuff that you're best at. From a business perspective, I know many people listening to this will be business owners. Typically, the stuff that you are really good at, that you love, is also the highest value activity you can be doing from a remuneration perspective, if you were to break it down price per hour. So if you're doing that, you can then afford to pay for the other person to do the £10 an hour task, £25 an hour, £50 an hour task, whatever it is, which ultimately makes you more profitable.
So what, like when you're working with clients on the business coaching, that's your main business, right? What's your sort of structure? How do you approach working with clients?
So my whole coaching philosophy is based on 3 core principles, which is absolute clarity of where you are, absolute clarity of where you're going, and not where you think you want to go, but where you really want to go, hence the North Star component. Intelligent action. So intelligent action is action that's aligned with your values and your goals in terms of where you're going, and then having active accountability to ensure that you're having your feet held to the fire to be able to do what needs to be done. And most people, they don't get truly clear on what it is that they really want as the end outcome. And just even by doing that, it can completely change the game, because then the clearer you are on where you want to get to, then it helps you identify what you really need to be doing and then who you need to be to show up in order for that to be able to happen.
So do you also help on? Do you do any like specific? Still, we were speaking about the NLP sales training and stuff like that, or any group coaching.
So we do groups. So yeah, I've got a few different. I've got an online membership. I've got online coaching. I've got in-person mastermind groups. I've got groups. I do a lot of work with business owners that have had an exit. So they've had their big dream exit. They've sold for tens of millions of pounds, whatever it might be, and then they're depressed. You know, because they've strived their whole life to achieve this thing that only ends up being the thing they never actually wanted. They thought they wanted it, but it was never really the thing. And that's where the North Star piece comes in, because I believe a North Star is having a mission in life that's the equivalent of trying to empty the sea with a spoon. When I was young, I was money obsessed, absolutely money obsessed. I was really materialistic. By the time I was 21, 22, I had the detached house, the gated drive, the convertible cars, the watches, you name it. And then I just got to the point and was like, oh, like, is this it? And that's the bit that I think that most people will get, that they get wrong, in that they pursue money thinking that it equals happiness, but money is just the byproduct of doing something else. And what I attempt to help people with now is understand what it is that truly fulfills them, so that they can pursue that mission that they accept they may never achieve, and they just keep working towards it. And yeah, like, I still like nice stuff. I've got goals. I've got things I want to achieve. I've got some crazy out there goals. You know, I want to go to space by the end of the decade. I want to live till I'm 150. There's all these crazy stuff, but ultimately I'm pursuing a mission that benefits me, benefits others, benefits my family, friends, community, society, humanity, the ripple effect, as I call it.
What's, to some listeners that aren't aware of NLP or NLP techniques, can you just give a bit of an overview and maybe dive into how people can tap into that, how they can? A lot of people during the day might get stressed or annoyed or frustrated or angry. How can they snap out of that?
Great question. So NLP, we touched on it. For people that don't know, Neuro-Linguistic Programming, it was founded based on family therapy and hypnosis back in the 1970s or whatever it was. And it's an ability to understand how to replicate certain ways of doing things. And the reason I say it like that is because I think of like an art and a science. An art is completely creative. A science is something you can replicate. And the reason that NLP is a science is because you can replicate creating a particular outcome or a particular situation that you might want to create from a human perspective. When we then talk about how we can create change, so a big component of NLP is about state management, is how you can train your state. We might call it our emotional state, or some people might call it their emotions. So there's some very, very practical things that can be done. I believe personally that any negative emotion, and arguably positive emotion as well, but any negative emotion is simply a signal. It's a signal to think or act differently. So then we go, okay, right, well, if we understand that we should need to think or act differently, which is it? Is it an act differently, or is it a think differently? And if it's a think differently, then what we need to be able to do is to know how to influence our thinking. If you were to say to someone, right, I want you to draw an elephant, they might be able to draw an elephant, a big long nose or whatever. They have an ability to do it. If you were to say, right, I want you to influence how you think, most people have never been trained in how they think. And that for me is where NLP becomes super powerful, because it gets you to understand how you think. None of it, we got taught how to write, how to read, but none of us ever got really taught how to learn, how to properly learn. And that's what I think NLP gives us the ability to do, is understand how we can think and change the way that we operate.
I think with the... Go on.
I was going to say, do you think it'd be a good thing for them to teach NLP in schools?
I think that it would be an amazing thing for us to teach the power of mindset in schools, whether it's NLP or otherwise. Yes, and it's as a result of a client of mine that we literally ran our first pilot last month of doing exactly that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And what's your approach with that? Because I guess there's you can go for the lighter, like if you're doing a full learning of NLP, there's a darker side that you can tap into of NLP in terms of the persuasion, and I guess it's the thin line between manipulation and persuasion and influence. So what would your approach be in your teaching to schools to make sure that there's, not going to ever head into that direction?
I think that anything in life, like you said, there's a dark side to it. Well, you can't have a dark side without a light side. Everything has both sides, and that's one of the biggest mistakes that people make in life, is that they see things as one sided. They go, I only ever want to be happy, I never want to be sad. Well, it's a delusion. I only want to be positive, I never want to be negative. It's a delusion. I only ever want to be good, I never want to be bad. It's a delusion. It's about being able to live aligned to our own individual values. My sort of getting really nuanced on it is means values, the things that give your life meaning. So in answer to your question, what is the difference between manipulation and influence? I believe in one word, it's intent. Is what's the intent is something's being done. So if I'm using the same tool, like NLP tool or whatever it is that I might be using, is my intention a win-win? Do they win and do I win? Because in that case, I'm trying to influence them for the greater good. If I'm trying to influence them for my gain and their loss, then it's a win-lose. And in that case, I believe it then becomes manipulation. So how do you do that? We went into year 9 kids and we were teaching it for year 9 kids. Some relatively basic things, but it's only basic once you've learnt more advanced things, right? So there was a time when I went, oh my God, this is amazing, this is incredible.
I think they certainly should teach, like say NLP or similar or mindset within schools from a young age, because I use it, I've used certain things just with friends or people around you that start heading down just those depressing thoughts or conversations, and we all know those types of people. If you've been friends with people a long time and they're quite negative, and you can just sit back and just say you're literally your own problem, so to speak. All these external factors, you're just repeating your problem.
Everything happens to me.
Everything happens to me, and it's like, but to have the ability sometimes, and it doesn't work with everyone, but to try and break those pathways, and to reframe their thinking, and to try and guide them back on a positive route, which I just think if you have the ability of that, you're so much less likely to have anxiety or depression. And I know there's more, what would you call it, like actual kind of medical level depression and anxiety, but now there's so much of it that I guess you probably wouldn't call it a deep level, as in it's quite fixable.
Yeah, and I would argue that it's fixable at every level, regardless of what it is.
Your average person, if they had some training, would probably be able to control their mind to not let them go to that deep level. As in, I don't think I would ever... I think I'd be able to control my mind enough to not let myself go into a deep level of depression or anxiety, just because I know how to spot when something's coming in my brain, and I can quite quickly break that pattern and reframe to put myself into a more positive state.
There's different levels to it, I suppose. From a practical perspective, what you're saying about the victim is that one of the fundamental things is it starts with personal responsibility, like 100% radical responsibility for how your situation is. And the majority of the population are still in victim mode. There's an amazing guy, and Steve, what's his name? It'll come to me in a minute. But he talks about the 4 stages of a spiritual awakening, and the first stage is that life happens to me. Right, so you're the victim. Then it's so life happens to me, then it's life happens to me, then it's by me, so I make it happen. I'm the driver, I've done it, this is what I've done. Then it's life happens for me, and then it's finally life happens to me, by me, through me, and as me. And the through me and as me is just, it's a lot more, you could call it feminine in energy, but it's more, well, it is what it is, it's the way the situation is. And then as me is life just is. And I was certainly, I'd made that transition from not, I don't think I ever really was the victim, but I then created the awareness. Then I was very much, I'm making it happen, I'm doing it. And then I realised actually even that has its limits, and that becomes detrimental to then being able to see things in a different light, in a way where I'm not religious, but am I spiritual? Absolutely. And believing in sort of some sort of grand orderly design of how things are happening. And Albert Einstein famously said, the most important decision you can make is it a beautiful universe or not, or something to that effect. I'm paraphrasing, and I do believe in that. If we could see our situations that are happening on a daily basis, whether they're happening the way that we desire them or not, to be going, if we can see that it's happening perfectly for us at any moment, then life changes.
All of it is like, not all of it, it's just mindset shifts, really, isn't it? Because it can, anything from someone saying, a few things have not happened the way someone wants it today, and then suddenly it's like, it's just like, this is going to be such a bad day. And then like, if you have that mindset the whole day, then yeah, you're going to have a bad day and everything's going to happen to you, right? Whereas if you're like, all right, cool, a few things didn't go my way, but I'm going to have a good day now, like those little tiny shifts. And I think with the NLP, a lot of it is about, a lot of people do the things that NLP teach, but they don't realize they're doing it. But then you intentionally can do it once you've had the NLP training.
Yeah, which is the intention, right? So you're either doing things, is the first book I ever read, and it kind of linked back to your first question, which was why did I write the book, is because I read a book called The Secret by Rhonda Byrne. It was the first personal development book I ever read. But what was fascinating for me was that what The Secret was talking about when I read that book, I went, so that's what I've been doing.
Yeah.
Right, so I didn't realize I'd been doing all this stuff from even when I was a kid, and I wanted to have petrol scooters and items of clothing or whatever it would have been that I wanted. I visualized it, I saw it, and that's just what I did. I did it without even realizing. And then I read the book and went, so this is actually a thing. Right, now I get it. So now I can apply it consciously rather than doing it unconsciously. And what tends to happen for most people is almost always, in fact, what was the first personal development book you ever read? Do you remember?
Probably The Secret.
The Secret. And for you?
But I read Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Rich Dad Poor Dad, right.
That was mindset.
So for most people, it's normally The Secret, Rich Dad Poor Dad, Think and Grow Rich, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It's normally one of the classics, right?
Read that one.
It's normally one of the classics. Yeah. And what happens in those instances is, and some people it was like a Paul McKenna book, but it doesn't matter who it was or what the book was. But what happens is, for most people, if you were to then ask them, what's the best personal development book you've ever read? It's almost always the first book they ever read, because it's the first book that created the biggest jump in awareness. And made them go, right, now I get it. That's amazing. I get it now. And that's where I think when it comes back to NLP or any other form of mindset knowledge, when you learn those tools, if they give you that gap to be able to jump from here to here and really leap forward, I suppose you could say, then it becomes super impactful.
Yeah, let's just start studying that in English, like those books, rather than, I think, I don't know, was it Three Blind Mice or whatever it was?
Of Mice and Men.
Yeah, Mice and Men, yeah. It's all of them.
So on spirituality, I guess it kind of connects. You've got multiple businesses, but in specific, you have the medicinal mushroom. Is that what you'd call it? Medicinal mushroom business. Talk about that. How have you got involved with that? Is that just through personal learnings and? Yeah,
so. And this is where it comes back to the whole concept of creating a life by design, right? So if you want to live a life you love, well, do stuff that you love. If you do stuff that you love every single day, you're going to live a life that you love. And my core coaching and training business, I love the way that we interact with people. I love the things that we do. I love the impact that we have, the various different programs we do. That's great. What I believe, and I never know, it could change, but I believe is that's not going to be a business that I'm going to go on to create what I would call mega wealth from. And the reason I want to have substantial wealth is because then I can have more experiences, I can do more with it, I can have more impact on various other people and do certain things. And when I was plotting out my North Star trajectory, so North Star trajectory is having like your ultimate goal and then going sort of 50 years out, 20 years out, 10 years out, and you put in these milestones of various things you want to do. And I remember creating a financial figure of what I wanted to achieve kind of 10 years out from now. This must have been coming up to about 4 years ago, and 4 or 5 years ago. And it's one thing saying the number, but if you just say the number, like, and don't at least think some degree of practically how it's going to happen, then what's the likelihood that that's going to happen? So I was like, I've generated X, and I've done it by selling a business, and it was as broad as that. Then over time, I revisit. So this document, I call it, it's like basically all of my future goals. I read it pretty much every week, and over time I refine certain things that are further out. So it was over a period of time, it started off as I've sold a business, then I've realized I wanted it to be a product-based business. So rather than it be a service-based business, it'd be a product-based business. And then I was starting to think about, well, what product could I fold into my existing audience? I've got a bit of a social media following, I've got an email list, I've got a network of people, I've got kind of known for doing this stuff. So what could I fold in? And then I thought, maybe a supplement, some sort of supplement. What could that be? And then what happened was it started as a result of, first of all, a client of mine was telling me how he'd been taking this product called Lion's Mane, and he was saying that he really likes it, but one of his frustrations is that in order to get really good Lion's Mane, a really good quality, he's having to buy it in from America, and you got all the challenges with that, taxes and the time frame it takes for it to come in, and yada yada yada. And I thought, this is interesting. Doing a bit of research, going, wow, this looks like a really interesting product. And then it was on a podcast, actually. So there was a guy called Tim Gray. I don't know if you've ever come across Tim Gray. He sort of positions himself as the UK's #1 biohacker. And I had him on my podcast, and we were talking about this, and we got on to mushrooms and talking about it and talking about the benefits of it and him saying how beneficial they are and whatnot. Anyway, when the podcast episode came out, my friend Mark called me up and said, I've just heard you talking about mushrooms on your podcast with Tim. I've just started growing them at home. You said on the show that you're thinking about starting a business doing it. Well, why don't we do it together? And that's how it got started. So it was always the intent of build the business, grow it, sell it, exit it. And now we launched about 2.5 years ago. It took about 18 months to get ready to launch. And then, we're about 2.5 years into it now.
How's it going? Sales good?
We're growing. Yeah, we've had some challenges. You know, businesses, you go set out with an intent. You think it's all going to be smooth. And we've had some challenges. But for me personally, it's been a really interesting learning curve. I've had a bunch of different service-based businesses. E-commerce is very different, but it's been good fun.
When would the goal be for the exit on that business?
I would have liked to have said, like I said, we've had some challenges over the last year or so, which has kind of put us back. I would have liked to have said realistically within the next 3 years maximum. We'll see.
I think medicinal mushrooms it's coming up in a lot more conversations now than it did, and it's coming up a lot on social media more than it did, and more and more people are talking about it. So it's coming, more accessible, right?
Yeah, there's certain brands that have done a really, really good job at making it become more mainstream. And I think that you've got certain brands that have been very clever in the way that in order for something to be mass market, one of the biggest challenges that you have with it is people are, in today's day and age, quite restricted financially on where they want to be. So it's all well and good saying, right, well, you need this extra thing, but if you can get people to swap something else out so it doesn't necessarily cost them more money, then you're more likely to get more people do it. So, for example, coffee, lots of people drink coffee most days. Well, if you switch your Starbucks to a mushroom coffee, or your Nescafe that you have at home for a mushroom coffee, then that becomes an obvious swap. We don't sit in that market. We're a premium supplement. We are double the price of pretty much every other mushroom supplement out there, but we're pretty much 10 to 12 times the strength. So,
really?
Yeah.
So what is it you're selling?
So, pure fruiting body organic lion's mane, and the same, but for reishi.
And what, for listeners that aren't aware, what are some of the benefits of taking these?
So for lion's mane, which is why it's so popular for a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs, it's typically better focus, better memory, better mood. But reishi, it's better for immunity, for calm, for sleep, and can be more along those lines. Relaxation generally.
Have you done a lot of research? I know it's not currently allowed to be sold here, but have you done much research around psilocybin mushrooms and microdosing of psilocybin mushrooms?
That's not from a business perspective, it's not kind of in the plan. I mean, my hunch was that, and it was kind of part of the exit plan, was that I believe we're more likely to see those types of sort of psychedelic mushrooms become more legalized. Mm-hmm. So therefore, if we've built a supplement brand, we're more likely to get bought by a business, because then we've already got an active database of customers on subscription that want to and are willing to buy supplements to benefit them in one way or another. So the goal was always a case of looking at long term to potentially sell to an organisation that may then look to introduce that as and when and if they're legalised. Mm-hmm. But it's not something we spend energy on right now because we can't.
So with the ones that you sell, what is it like? You take it daily or a couple times a day?
Yeah. So for the for reishi and for lion's mane, which are the two products that we've got live available for sale right now, you take it daily, sort of a couple of capsules a day. And the way I describe it to most people is a bit like exercise. If you try and describe the benefit of exercise to somebody that's never exercised before, they're not going to get it. If you've exercised for any length period of time, 6 weeks, 6 months, and then you just stop, you only really notice how much exercise benefited you when you've stopped. So I say to people, well, take it and then stop, and then you'll notice how much it was benefiting you.
Give us a bit of a breakdown on the business side of how people can actually get started and some of the initial early challenges and the money that you need to back in terms of if you're running Google ads, Facebook ads, TikTok ads, wherever you're.
So I suppose there's, and I'm going to kind of go back 20 years. When I was a kid and I was at school, I was buying and selling. Yeah, that's and you hear the old stories, but I literally was that guy in playgrounds selling sweets, and you guys might be a bit young to remember, but there was a famous cyclist called Lance Armstrong. He ended up getting done
the yellow wristbands.
The yellow wristbands, right? So I used to sell those, right? And they used to be 99 cents, and I used to buy them. This is 20 years ago, just to put this into context. More than 20 years ago, put this into context in terms of money. But they were 99 cents, but you couldn't get them anywhere. I don't even know how, still to this day, I found this way of being able to get them for like $2, but I would sell them for £10, which £10 20 years ago is like, I don't know, whatever that works out with inflation, but probably 20, 25 quid. That's quite a lot of money.
I actually forgot all about that, but I was selling them as well. 'Cause remember you had the anti-racism ones as well, didn't you? Black and white, and they used to attach to each other, and they were really hard to get hold of as well. Yeah, there was loads of the different ones. That's crazy.
But yeah, so that was back then. So the key thing being back then was, and then I was selling Burberry stuff, Burberry scarves, then Burberry caps, then Lacoste polo shirts, and it was all these things. But the difference that I never realised then, that I was selling stuff that there was a demand for, and it was a very interesting lesson in supply and demand, because I would look at stuff in my local paper. So we used to get this paper called the Essex Chronicle, and I would look in the paper section at the back of the paper, look for things for sale. And then I would then go on eBay, and if I could see them on eBay selling for more, I would go and buy them from the paper and then put them on eBay, because I knew that I could make the difference. So that was a very early lesson in supply and demand. And I think where people get stuff wrong nowadays is that they get so obsessed on creating a great product that they forget about that the real value is in there being a demand for it. And yeah, that I think that's the biggest mistake that most people make, is that they go, I've got this amazing idea, it's the best ever product, this is really, really, really innovative bin, for example, and they get the bin and people go, all right, yeah, that's cool, that's got some cool features, but I don't need it and I don't really want it.
Yeah, I'm not paying 200 quid.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So unless you can make it, and then you've got different levels, haven't you? So you've got things that people need but don't really want. The thing that comes to my mind in those instances, things that I need but I don't really want. Whenever I think of something like, I think of insurance. I know it's not a product, but I think insurance. I need insurance. I don't want it, but I've got to get it. I need petrol. I don't particularly want petrol, but I want the byproduct of where the car's going to get me to.
And all of these things are subscriptions as well, right? Because you're always going to need them.
And then you've got things that you want, the things that you genuinely, and this is where things like luxury lifestyle and things like that come into play, and luxury, because people want to have the things. There's a desire around it. There's significance attached to having said whatever it is, the new handbag that comes out, and there's those positionings. So in answer to your question, if people want to get started, what's the best thing that they can do is actually find out, is there a demand, and actually is the demand increasing or decreasing? So when we were first looking at sort of the mushroom business, it was very easy. We could go on Google Trends and we could start to see, and you could see that lion's mane, it was going up. And as more and more brands have come to the market, I mean, we absolutely weren't the first, but there's been a hell of a lot more since us. Then you can see that moving up. You can see things that are happening. It's like I've got friends that have brought out caps, and they've come up with these really, they've created this new brand of cap. Well, it falls flat on its face because nobody really needs it. Nobody really wants it unless they've made it really desirable, because David Beckham's been seen wearing it, and all of a sudden everybody wants it. So I don't know if I've answered your question or not really, but it starts with that.
It's the thought process
of what you should do. Yeah. Do you produce the product yourself, or you buy?
We grow it, we harvest it, we encapsulate it, the whole lot. Yeah.
Did you start off doing that?
Yep.
Did you think about buying in and selling, or?
No. Well, did we think about it? So this is the thing that's really, I could be really pedantic and on this, but just, so did we think about it? Yes, we did, but we ruled it out very quickly. Yeah. Because for us it was, well, how do we put ourselves in a category of one? And one of my business partner, a big thing for us was no bulkers, no fillers, basically no crap in the product. That then positions a UK grown. Well, most people can't compete with that. Anybody, any one of us today could go on Alibaba or go on sort of some of these websites, get a white label product, stick a label on it, and all of a sudden we're selling a product. Well, the barrier to entry is so low. Whereas if you can be in a business where the barrier to entry, so nobody could compete with us, because unless they wanted to spend best part of £100,000 on a facility, then spend 6 months getting Soil Association organic certified, like there was just no way that they could catch up with us quickly. And we believe that if we got far ahead enough, fast enough, then people would struggle to catch us up.
And what's your main marketing tactics at the minute? Where do you push?
That was mainly like meta ads, so Instagram, Facebook, Google, obviously. But marketing is one of those things where it is the lifeblood of all businesses. You know, all business is really innovation and marketing. If you don't continually innovate, then you evaporate. And equally, if you have the best product in the world but no one knows about it, then...
So I've got another question for you then. What about focus and being focused all in on one business? And some people and entrepreneurs to say that, how you've got multiple businesses, you spoke about 2, you've wrote a book, you've got podcasts, you've what would you say to people like that? You've worked with a lot of business owners. Some entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs, will say the biggest mistake I see is people not going all in on one business and not staying focused. What would you say to that?
So focus is an acronym, isn't it? Follow one course until successful. I personally struggle to do one thing, so I like to have multiple things going. However, there's a caveat to that, which is I think of spinning plates. So I really like the 70-20-10 approach. So I'll make something my focus for 70% of the time, and I'll have something that's 20% of my time, and I'll have something that's 10% of my time. Now, that 70-20-10 focus can change, but I also, so the other businesses that I've got, whether it's the mushroom business, whether it's Super Profits, whether it's Leap, these other businesses that I've got, they're designed in a way whereby they're not to become all consuming. So I'm going into them becoming like there's a new AI business, we're touching on the ideas whether it comes off or not at the moment, but I'll be very, very clear exactly what I will do and what I won't do. And if that can't be done and there's more of a requirement for me to need to do more, that's where for me it's like I can't be involved.
How do you set that from the start? How do you know from the start realistically what requirements there's going to be? Because all businesses, as you mentioned earlier, and I think I said off camera, you always go into a business with uninformed optimism.
You do, but I also think that business is simple. I'm not saying it's easy, but it is simple. In the grand scheme of things, particularly a startup, there's only so many things that need to be done. There's an operational component of business delivery, there's sales and marketing, and there's admin, and then arguably there's a form of there's a form of promotion from a person that could arguably sit under sales and marketing. So really it's those components. So as long as you're super, super clear. So this is a little hack for anyone that's listening to the show right now. So I've had multiple businesses with business partners, and I've had some that have gone terribly wrong. I say terribly wrong, where our values haven't aligned and have not worked out for the best. And I've had some that have been an absolute dream. And the difference is clarity from the beginning. So if you're going to get into business with somebody else, it's finding complementary opposites. So that's a co-founder that isn't the same as you, and you have really, really clear roles of who's looking after this, who's looking after that. But the little hack that I want to share with everyone, so one of the best business books that anyone can read, that hardly anyone has read, is a book called Who by Jeff Smart and Randy Street. And most people will say in business, the hardest part of business is staff, right? It's finding good people, and it's making sure good people are doing good work, because most business owners that are struggling to some degree would go, oh my God, if everybody could do it like me, then we'd be fine. If only I could clone myself, right? They've probably said, you guys said that at some point. Yeah.
Definitely.
And the key here is comes back to happiness is equal to or greater than expectations, which I said previously, but there's an additional part to that, which is happiness is equal to or greater than expectations, and most expectations aren't communicated effectively. So how do we get over that? Well, thanks to the wonders of AI and now ChatGPT, in the book Who by Jeff Smart and Randy Street, they have literally the step-by-step guide to hiring A players into your business, word for word, verbatim questions to ask in interviews, the exact interview process. But the thing that sits before all of that is what they call a scorecard. So most of us will think of a job description, and you'll go, right, well, there's your job description, and you whack it together and you crack on. But a job description is telling people what they do. None of us as business owners want people to do tasks. We want outcomes delivered. It's more about outcome, not output. And by having this scorecard, which has a mission, that, like, in a couple of sentences, what's the mission of the role, then what's the desired outcome, so specific key metric outcomes, then the competencies of the individual. So if you go on ChatGPT now and say, write me a scorecard based on the book Who by Jeff Smart and Randy Street, 4A, insert job title, I don't know, social media manager 4, and then put your website in a matter of seconds, it will produce you a document that you could hand to a team member that will give them more clarity about what's expected of them than most people have ever given any employee ever. and it takes a couple of minutes.
That's a good piece of advice. I think that's something I definitely have made mistakes on before.
But you can do the same with business partners. So you go, right, well, here's what I'm going to do, here's what I'm not going to do. Something that I learned from a mentor of mine, he calls it a shit list. It's not a technical term. But he says, if you're going to go into partnership with somebody, think of all of the things that could go wrong ahead of time. So it's far better to use, most of us will say, hindsight's a wonderful thing. Well, yeah, hindsight is a wonderful thing, but we can also use foresight. So the shit list is what all of the things that could possibly go wrong ahead of time, and then you then come up with mitigating circumstances. So basically you come up with something that if this happens, then this, if this, then that, if this, then that. Now that's really good from a business partnership point of view, because it basically creates your it helps you identify who's going to do what task. It also helps create expectations ahead of time. It can also make up part of your head of terms before you even go and get a shareholder agreement. So they're things that are really helpful. But what it means is that, does that mean everything that could ever possibly go wrong you're going to think of? No, it's not. But at least for 30, 40, 50 things, whatever it might be, you've given some time ahead of time to think about, well, if these things happen, we just instantly go into this situation. This is what we do. You know, it's like if you get on an aeroplane, they say, right, if the plane crashes, they tell you every single time, if the plane crashes, get into the brace position, then get your life jacket out, here's your whistle, leave the exit, follow the... We all know it because we've been on the planes enough time to have heard it. But if we've got a process ahead of time, then we, as and when and if it happens, it's not, oh my God, this is really bad. It's, well, this is what we do next instead.
Yeah.
And then, of course, when there are the things that inevitably come up that you haven't thought of, then you've got more attention to be able to give to them because of the other things have got a process to be able to be followed.
Yeah, that makes sense. I did this recently and it was funny. I could so easily spot it. So when I use AI, I make sure to change it to the English first of all, so it's not Zs and stuff like that with ChatGPT.
So annoying that.
Get rid of, like, you know, the like double dash thing it does. I change all of that. I put a personal touch in the first sentence and I just tweak it slightly. But I was using it and we was negotiating. I guess it is negotiating back and forth on everything you just said. So if this happens, you know, it was an investor, so it was okay how we piecing this all together. And it was just literally my prompts of AI against his prompts of AI, just going back and forth, just negotiating until we finally got there. I thought it's just so funny, isn't it? It's like
you could tell that he was using it.
Yeah, completely. I was like, whoever's better at prompting AI basically wins here, isn't it? I was like, I asked ChatGPT, I was like, is he using AI?
But even that with AI, you know, you can talk to AI and say, look, this is my desired outcome. Yeah, I want this to happen in a few revisions as possible. That means that I end up with a world-class whatever outcome. Yeah. Well, even just having that as the actual desired outcome before you get into everything else is just going to speed up the whole process.
Yeah. I think it's where two people have said the slight different outcomes. One to protect themselves more when you're protecting yourself more. But we got there in the end anyway. But,
Did you speak to him about it?
Not yet, I haven't, no. I will.
That's funny. But so many people are doing that, it's just AI. Because now even when you're just writing emails, it comes up saying, do you want AI to just make this for you or make it better?
We have the same with emails and stuff.
You can tell with the dashes though, and then one thing it always says is elevate. Like, if ChatGPT always loves to use the words elevate. Like, do you want to elevate your business? Do you want to elevate your mindset? Whatever, always that word.
Copy and paste some like long emails or text that you've wrote yourself and just say,
get to teach it yours.
Just say exactly this sort of language. So you said AI. You're working on a potential AI business. What's that? What's that involving?
I'm just working out whether I can talk about it or not. It's basically I've got an audience of people. I've got clients and I've got a lot of people that want to use AI. Like most of us have played with ChatGPT, but that's just touching the surface of what's possible. And the real efficiencies in business are going to come from the operational use of AI. And I believe that if you think of a typical company hierarchy or accountability chart where you have like the managing director, the reporting directors, the managers that sit under them, the team that sit under them, and you imagine it like that, I believe in time that the traditional company hierarchy is going to go, and every person that works on a team is going to have a whole team of AI agents that work underneath them, and most people just have no idea how they would even go about. A lot of people have probably never even heard of AI agents, but imagine just a whole platoon of employees that cost next to nothing, that are working for you, that can do tasks faster than your employees, better than your employees, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, don't moan, don't call in sick, etc., etc. Now, that doesn't mean that loads and loads of jobs are going to be replaced. It just means that everybody gets enhanced in terms of what they can be doing, and it's exploring how we can look at doing that for people, creating these agents and doing these various different projects.
Nice. When do you think you'll be bringing that to market?
Again, it's a partnership with somebody, so whether that I mean, I want to do it regardless, whether it's with him or somebody else. So yeah, we'll soon, relatively soon.
Where does that sit in the 70, 20, 10?
I mean, at the moment it's 10, and this comes back to my thing of, well, if I've already got an audience that have a requirement, because when we, generally speaking, when we think of business, we think of, right, you're investing time or you're investing money, but money is a resource and time is a resource, and there's other types of resources. So in today's day and age, I'm sure you've seen it, there's lots of people that will tap into influencers, because one influencer posting one thing can blow a business up overnight. Well, that influencer has got resource in the sense of their following or whatever else, and I've got a resource of a very particular tight demographic of people that have a requirement for this thing. Comes back to supply and demand. I've got a bunch of people that have I've got a supply of people that have an interest, a want, a desire to be wanting able to do this, and if I can plug that in, then I become valuable to that business. Whereas a lot of people would think, well, you're valuable to the business as an investor if you can invest your resource in the form of time. Well, I can invest my resource in the form of creating introductions and network. So yeah.
Okay, cool. So thank you for joining us today, Will. If for the listeners, if they want to find you, where's best? What's your socials?
Best to, I mean, you can find everything at willpolston.com, and yeah, socials, it's the same, Will Polston, on LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, wherever. And
where can they purchase the book? North
Star Thinking. Again, I mean, you can get access to the various different outlets via willpolston.com, but yeah, you can go on Amazon, Waterstones, Barnes and Noble, depending on where you are in the world listening to this. But
is it on audio as well?
It's on audio. Yeah, it's on audio.
Nice. Cool. Well, appreciate you coming on.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Yes, cheers, Will.